Do you ever wake up tired of being alive? Not because you want to die, but because everything feels heavy. You open your eyes, but your soul doesn't follow. Even small things, messages, faces, noise, start to feel like too much. You tell yourself to move, to push through, but something deep inside whispers, not today. You call it laziness, weakness, burnout. But what if it's none of that? What if your soul is not giving up? It's trying to protect you. Carl Jung believed that when the psyche can't carry the lie of your life anymore, it shuts the system down, not to destroy you, but to rebuild you. So if you've been lying still lately, maybe it's not because you're broken. Maybe it's because something sacred inside you is finally asking to be heard. Sometimes it's not your body that's tired. It's your soul that's done pretending. You wake up, stare at the ceiling, and every part of you knows you can't keep doing this. Not because you're weak, but because something inside has stopped agreeing with the life you're forcing yourself to live. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious has its own form of intelligence. It intervenes when the ego goes too far. When your outer life moves in one direction and your inner truth moves in another, the psyche shuts the system down. It's not punishment, it's protection. And this shutdown doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's small, quiet. You start canceling plans. You scroll for hours without absorbing anything. You sit in your car after work, engine off, staring into nothing. Your body's there, but your spirit isn't. You think you're being lazy, but your soul is trying to save your energy for something real. Jung wrote that every symptom carries meaning, that the psyche speaks through what it withholds. So when you can't move, when you feel heavy, ask, what am I resisting facing? Maybe it's the job that drains you because it feeds everything except your purpose. Maybe it's the relationship that feels like performing, not loving. Maybe it's the version of yourself you keep pretending to be because it's easier than disappointing people. And the unconscious, tired of the act, simply says, no more. It takes away your motivation not to destroy you, but to return you to honesty. You'll know it's this kind of exhaustion when rest doesn't help. You sleep 10 hours and wake up heavier. You take a vacation and dread coming back. Because the problem was never energy, it was alignment. The mind can lie, the mouth can smile, but the soul never participates in what's false. When it senses you're living a life disconnected from who you truly are, it refuses to supply energy to it, just like a tree stops sending sap to a dead branch. Modern psychology confirms what Jung intuited. The brain needs stillness to repair identity. In moments of deep rest, the so-called default mode network, the psyche organizes emotion, memory, and trauma into coherence. What looks like doing nothing is actually rebuilding yourself from within. So the next time you find yourself unable to move, stop calling it failure. Sit with it, feel it, ask it what it's trying to protect. Maybe your soul isn't tired of life. Maybe it's tired of the life that isn't truly yours. There comes a moment when your body doesn't just feel tired. It feels heavy with truth. Because every emotion you've swallowed, every word you never said, every version of yourself you've performed for the world has weight. And eventually the body says, I can't carry this lie anymore. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the parts of you that you repress, deny, or hide because you've been told they're unacceptable. Anger, envy, grief, desire, exhaustion, all the feelings you've labeled as wrong. You didn't destroy them, you just buried them alive. And here's the cruel law of the psyche. What you avoid doesn't disappear, it waits. It waits for silence. It waits for the day your willpower cracks and your defenses drop. Then it emerges, not as chaos, but as fatigue. That's why you can feel exhausted even after doing nothing. It's not the task that drains you. It's the pretense. You're tired because you spent years pretending to be fine. You've been strong for too long, You've carried the image of who you think you should be instead of allowing who you really are to exist. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And that darkness isn't outside you. It's inside the parts of you you abandoned. Think about it. How many times have you smiled when you wanted to scream? How many times have you said, I'm okay, when every cell in your body was collapsing? How many times have you swallowed resentment just to keep the peace? That energy doesn't vanish. It gets stored in your muscles, your stomach, your chest. You feel it as tension, insomnia, headaches, anxiety. The body becomes the canvas for the emotions the mind refused to paint. The shadow speaks through exhaustion because that's the only language left. It knows that when you're too tired to pretend, you might finally start to feel. And when you start to feel, you start to heal. So the next time you collapse, when you can't move, when your body demands stillness, don't rush to escape it. Ask yourself, what part of me have I been silencing? Because that's not depression calling you to disappear. It's your shadow calling you home. You've been taught to believe that rest is failure, that stopping means falling behind, that if you're not producing, you're wasting time. But nature doesn't move like that. Even the sun sets, even the ocean sleeps, even the gods rest after creation. In every myth, the pattern repeats itself. After the flood comes stillness, after the war, silence, after the miracle, withdrawal. The universe expands, then contracts, breathes in, then exhales. But you've been trying to inhale forever, and that's why you feel like you're suffocating. Jung understood that this rhythm, creation and retreat, lives inside every soul. When your psyche demands rest, it's not regression, it's a return to the source. You are following the same law that guides every living thing. You can't stay in the light forever. Look around you. The mother who never stops caring, never stops giving, she starts to shake when she finally sits down, because stillness exposes how exhausted she truly is. The artist who used to feel inspired but now can't touch a brush, not because the muse is gone, but because the mind is begging to be empty again. The man who wakes up and dreads his own reflection, he's not weak. He's reached the edge of pretending. Even divine forces need darkness to find balance. You are no different. You keep asking, why am I so tired? But tell me, how long have you been holding your breath trying to be enough? How long have you forced yourself to shine, even when your light was burning out? The ancients understood something we've forgotten. Rest isn't the opposite of life, it's part of it. It's the sacred pause that makes renewal possible. The seed doesn't grow while fighting the soil, it grows in darkness, quietly. Your soul works the same way. So when you feel that pull to withdraw, when every cell in your body whispers, stop, don't see it as collapse. See it as cosmic alignment. You're not losing your place in the world. You're finding your place within it again. What Jung intuited a century ago, neuroscience now proves. When your mind goes quiet, when you stop forcing yourself to move, your brain begins to heal. Inside you, there's a network of regions called the default mode network. It activates when you rest, daydream, or simply stare at the ceiling. It's the system that weaves your inner world together, connecting memory, emotion, imagination, and identity. When you're doing nothing, this network is doing everything. It digests unprocessed emotions, replays unfinished conversations, and integrates what the conscious mind avoided. That's why people often say, I overthink when I'm alone. You're not overthinking, you're integrating. You're watching the psyche cleaning itself. The problem isn't the stillness, it's that you keep interrupting it. Think about how most people live. You wake up to noise. You scroll before your feet hit the floor. You run from task to task, meeting to meeting, thought to thought. Every silence feels uncomfortable. Every pause feels wrong. Because the world has taught you that rest equals weakness. But the body disagrees. The nervous system disagrees. And eventually the psyche says, if you won't stop, I'll stop you. That's why burnout feels like your mind just shuts off. Because it does. The brain's energy shifts from action networks to repair networks. Focus drops. Motivation disappears. You feel like you can't care about anything. Not because you're lazy, but because your mind has entered emergency restoration mode. You see it in everyday moments. The afternoon crash where coffee doesn't help. The sudden emptiness in the middle of success. The anxiety that vanishes the moment you're alone in nature. These are the psyche's pressure valves. Ways of saying, let me breathe. Carl Jung once wrote, the soul has a logic of its own, and it will break the outer order to restore the inner one. Modern psychology now agrees. Rest isn't the opposite of growth. It's a stage of it. Without stillness, the mind can't integrate experience. Without integration, identity begins to fracture. So when you can't focus, when you forget why you started, when you lie there staring at the ceiling, remember, your mind isn't malfunctioning. It's recalibrating. It's pausing to protect what's left of you. Because healing rarely looks like progress. Most of the time, it looks like stopping. Carl Jung believed that before every awakening, there must be a descent. The psyche doesn't rise through light. It sinks through darkness. And when life slows you down, when everything stops working, when even getting out of bed feels impossible, that's not regression, that's initiation. It's your soul pulling you away from the surface, back into the depths where truth lives. You think you're losing direction, but you're being redirected. You think you're falling apart, but what's falling apart is everything false. Jung called this descent individuation, the sacred process where the ego dissolves just enough to meet the self. It's not comfortable, it's dismantling. Because to become who you truly are, you first have to let go of who you pretended to be. That's why this stage often feels like death. Your ambitions fade, your relationships shift, your interests vanish. What used to excite you now feels hollow. The outer world loses its meaning because the inner world has started speaking louder. Think about it. Have you ever felt lost for no reason? Like the life you built suddenly stopped fitting you? That's not emptiness, that's evolution. The soul clears the stage before rewriting the script. Jung described it as the night sea journey, the mythical passage through darkness that all heroes must endure before rebirth. Moses in the desert, Jonah in the whale, Christ in the tomb. Each story whispers the same truth. Transformation requires stillness. You cannot rush rebirth. You must surrender to it. But the modern world doesn't teach surrender. It teaches survival. We've been conditioned to treat every silence as a threat, every pause as failure. So when the soul invites you inward, the ego panics. It calls it depression, burnout, isolation. But what if what you call losing yourself is actually the process of meeting yourself for the first time? This descent is not permanent. No one stays in the dark forever. The cocoon is not a coffin. It's a workshop. Something is being rebuilt there, quietly, patiently, in your absence. And one day, without forcing anything, movement returns. You start caring again. You start breathing easier. You look at the world and it looks different because now it's seen through your real eyes. That's what Jung meant when he said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. So when you find yourself lying still, unsure, empty, don't call it the end. Call it the beginning that only looks like an ending, because every soul must ascend before it can rise. Something happens when you finally stop fighting your stillness. At first, you lie there in guilt, in confusion, in silence. But after a while, the silence starts to speak. You begin to notice small things again. The sound of rain, your own breathing, the way sunlight lands on the wall. For the first time in months, maybe years, you're not rushing to fix yourself. You're just there. And that's when the real healing begins. The mind heals the moment you stop forcing it to perform. The heart heals the moment you stop asking it to pretend. The soul heals the moment you stop trying to escape its voice. You realize what you thought was collapse was communion. What you called burnout was your self burning away, what no longer belongs. It was never about losing energy. It was about losing illusion. And slowly, movement returns. Not because you forced it, but because something within you became light again. The weight doesn't vanish, but it feels different now. You can hold it without breaking. You can breathe inside it. Jung said that transformation begins the moment you can hold opposites: joy and pain, strength and vulnerability, chaos and calm, without needing to reject either. That's the birth of wholeness. When you stop seeing pain as punishment and start seeing it as participation in life. Every soul that heals goes through this. First resistance, then collapse, then surrender, then stillness, and finally clarity. Not the noisy clarity of certainty, but the quiet clarity of peace. And that peace changes how you move through the world. You no longer chase people or explanations or meaning. You start to listen instead of react. You start to feel instead of perform. You start to exist instead of prove. That's what rebirth really looks like. Not fireworks, but gentleness. Not confidence, but coherence. You no longer need to become someone. You already are. So if you're lying there thinking you've lost your spark, understand, the fire didn't die. It's just gone inward to light you from within. You've been taught that value comes from movement, that worth is measured by productivity, and silence is wasted time. But the truth is, some of the most important moments of your life will look like nothing from the outside. Because doing nothing is not the same as being disconnected. When you stop forcing the next step, your soul finally has space to catch up to your body. When you stop filling every silence, you begin to hear the whispers that were always there. Healing doesn't happen when you push harder. It happens when you stop interrupting what your body already knows how to do. The mind has a natural rhythm: expand, contract, rest, rise again. You are not broken for needing to pause. You are simply human, moving with the same rhythm as the tide. Think about it. The ocean doesn't apologize for retreating. The moon doesn't explain why it disappears. Winter doesn't rush to become spring. Nature rests because rest is part of creation. Why would your soul be any different? This is what Jung calls psychic balance. The harmony between doing and being, between outer progress and inner peace. When one dominates, the psyche rebels. But when you allow stillness, you make room for renewal. So when you find yourself lying there, unable to move, don't fill the silence. Let it speak. Let it hold you. Because silence is not the absence of life. It's the space where life reorganizes itself. You are not falling behind. You are falling inward. And sometimes that's the only direction that leads you home. There comes a moment in every life when the soul whispers softly, enough. Not enough life, but enough pretending, enough running, enough trying to be what the world wants. That whisper feels like exhaustion, but it's really an invitation. It's your soul asking you to come home, to lie down, not to give up, but to rest in your own truth, to stop chasing meaning outside and start listening to the quiet intelligence within. Carl Jung said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Maybe that's why the soul slows you down, so you have no choice but to meet yourself. So if you feel the weight, if you've been lying still, if you can't explain the tiredness anymore, don't rush to escape it. Stay. Breathe. Listen. Because sometimes the deepest healing doesn't come from effort, but from surrender. And when you finally stop fighting your stillness, you'll hear it. That soft, ancient voice that has been waiting beneath all the noise, whispering, "You're safe now. You can rest. You're home.